Welcome, everybody. Thanks all of you for support. Thanks for joining Results-Driven Leadership today. And this very important topic that I think so many people can relate to right now, which is A, how to conduct an effective meeting, but now B, that so many meetings have become virtual. What are some of the ground rules? What are some of the best practices? What do I need to do to alter myself in order to alter my facilitation in order to be more effective running a virtual meeting? And we're going to cover a lot of best practices today, but a little bit about results-driven leadership. We're a group of executives based here in Orange County who work with managers, executives, business owners, teams of managers, providing them the knowledge, schools, I said that very well, knowledge, skills, and tools that they need to be more effective managers. And this is part of one of the modules that we offer during our training courses. And hopefully you'll get a little taste of what we do and see some value. And if you have any questions or want any more information on our training modules, we'll talk about that. But conducting effective meetings remotely is something that has become a very hot topic. We've had a big sign up for this class today, and I understand why. Meetings, as a rule, I think it was Gallup came out with a study last year that said 88% of managers surveyed had attended meetings that were a waste of time. 28% of executives that had been surveyed reported that only 28% of their meetings were productive, that some kind of actionable outcome came from those meetings. So we've got a lot of people attending meetings, we've got a lot of people in meetings, but are we getting out of these meetings what we're looking to achieve? And so that is today's topic. There's a lot of meetings, and in the old world of Dave Barry, and hopefully you guys know him as an American humorist, if you had to identify in one word the reason why the human race has never achieved and never will achieve its full potential, the word would be meetings, because they can be a tremendous waste of time. And if in today's session we can offer you a few tips and tricks as to how to improve your meetings, we want to be able to do that. I think there is certainly best practices for any kind of meeting, whether they're in person or virtual. And we certainly, and Tony is an expert at this now on the virtual side of things. He, when we get to him, is going to be able to give you some great best practices. So today, hosting you, you've got the part of the results-driven leadership team. I'm Vaughn Sigmon. I'm one of the co-founders of Results-Driven Leadership, a former executive in the retail industry. Tony Penn, one of my partners and co-founders of the organization, also a former executive in the restaurant space. And we work with a lot of different industries out there on a lot of different topics. Our training, we found, is industry agnostic. And you will find as we go through here for this particular topic today that you'll find meetings are very agnostic, and whether you're running a meeting virtually in healthcare or a restaurant or retail or manufacturing or construction or whatever it might be, the tips are the tips. They're not that unique. So one of the first things we want to cover today is preparation. That is where we have seen through the years the best managers, the best executives, the most effective meetings begin with preparation. People being, not only the facilitator being prepared, but the facilitator preparing those who are in attendance or invited to that meeting be prepared. And that requires some level of communication. We'll give you some tips on that today. Every meeting you facilitate, this is the number one tip, has got to have a prepared agenda. It is probably 75% of the executives and managers we work with, they all nod their heads, say, yeah, we know we need an agenda, but we don't put it out. And I got to tell you, if you're really going to be, especially for a virtual meeting, you have got to have the preparation in place to have an agenda. ahead of time, and we're going to talk about how ahead of time that needs to be, but people need to be prepared coming in. You can't hit people cold when they're coming to a meeting based on the topics that you're going to be discussing. We're going to talk about the process of running a meeting. How do you properly, what are the best practices, the rules of engagement, the do's and don'ts for not only running a meeting in general, but in particular, how to manage and run a meeting from a virtual standpoint. And in the end, you want to make sure that you as a facilitator of a meeting are being accountable for your plans of action. That's the main purpose of holding meetings is getting actionable duties out of each meeting. Something's going to happen as a result of this meeting, that you're staying on your timelines and you're using the right resources. You're allocating your resources properly to make sure you got the right people doing the right thing at the right time. That is the main purpose of almost every meeting. It's communication, it's sharing information, it's making sure that what our goals, our strategies, our tactics are being communicated, being achieved. So this, like I mentioned earlier, is just one of 24 modules we offer through results-driven leadership. And let me just pause 1 second. I violated my own rule. As a best practice in a virtual meeting, you need to ask everybody to mute their mics unless called upon so that we don't have any background noise. So if everybody would just take 1 second and mute their mics so that we don't have any background noise, we would really appreciate that. Thank you for doing that. So here's a sampling of some of our 24 modules. Today, of course, we're looking at effective meetings. One of our more popular modules that we conduct is hiring top talent. I got to tell you, being able to interview and hire the best people possible, it's a learned skill, and we can teach you how to do that properly. How to set new employees up for success, how to hang on to them once you get started. Tony is an expert on collaborative buy-in and dealing with difficult people. He has to deal with me on a regular basis, so he is an expert at dealing with difficult people. And like I say, today we're talking about effective meetings. So let's discuss, and I want you to think about this. What do you dislike most about the meetings you've attended? Think about it as an attendee and sitting there. How many times have you said, why am I sitting here? I've got other things to do. I've got my own to-do list I need to get accomplished. Have you ever been in a meeting where there's that person that dominates the meeting, that tends to want to sway things their way or be the center of attention during the course of that meeting? Have you sat in meetings that have been complete monologues and there hasn't been much dialogue and you haven't been allowed to be able to put any of your thoughts or opinions into the topic of this meeting? Those are all things we want to make sure that you, from a dislike standpoint, eliminate as a facilitator. Maybe even share with some other folks the things that you're learning today on how to make meetings more effective. Now that we're in a more of a virtual world, I think one of the great outcomes from the COVID crisis has been the discovery of Zoom and other forms of having virtual meetings. I love it because I think it creates the opportunity, from a work from home standpoint, more people to work from home and have more freedom in their lives. I think that's terrific. I think a lot of employers are starting to embrace that as a mode that they wouldn't have maybe 6 months ago. Now they're seeing that is a pretty viable approach to having folks work with them, is the remote approach to some degree. So that's going to require more virtual meetings. So we're going to talk about some of those best practices today, but as you sat through some virtual meetings so far over the past 90 days, what's been going wrong with those meetings? You know, my wife has been work remotely for the first time in her career, and she sits in the room on the other side of this wall, and she's on a meeting after a meeting after a meeting. And I know she's on a meeting, and sometimes there's dead silence. Sometimes there is a lot of discussion going on, but very often she'll get off the meeting. I won't tell you who she works with, but it's like, why, what was this hour for? So you got to make sure. I think it's easier today to call a meeting or request a meeting because nobody has to go anywhere. You just jump on a Zoom call and have a meeting with somebody. So let's talk about some of those challenges today that are added in with a virtual meeting and keeping people's attentions, and some of the rules and engagements that that is included with that. And what would be some of the benefits if more meetings were remote? How much more productive could we be? How much more accomplished could we be if we were conducting more meetings remotely? We're going to talk about all those things today. But let's start with meeting preparation. Hit on it earlier, agendas. It is the single most vital part of conducting a meeting in a way that's going to be productive. And one of the things we're going to share with you, in fact, I emailed out a link to everybody that was on the sign up list today, a link to download some docs. And part of those docs are the PowerPoints that you're seeing here today, a place for you to take notes on those. But we gave you 2 agenda templates so that you can get some ideas of some good ways that we've used in the past in order to make sure we're staying on track. And so an agenda. An agenda is crucial. It's non-negotiable. Unfortunately, whether it's a remote meeting or an in-person traditional meeting, not many facilitators use an agenda. We cannot stress. I can tell you, I for years had meeting after meeting after meeting that I was conducting without an agenda. Once I drank it, once I drank the water on agendas and started structuring things around this agenda, a couple good things happened. More came out of those meetings. These meetings were more productive. We stayed on task. We stayed on point. We began meetings on time. We ended meetings on time. But because I'm a bit of a rambler, and you may see a bit of that in this presentation today, I could easily be swayed off track, which created an extension to the meeting. And if other people had duties or appointments or things to do after this meeting, I was affecting their lives in ways that I just did not realize. I was being very selfish about their time that I was taking up. And I got to tell you, with an agenda, as you as a facilitator start building an agenda, you have a lot of things you may want to talk about. But when you start building out an agenda, you may realize that I can't talk about all these in the time allotted. And by the way, we recommend that meetings don't exceed an hour. Now, yes, there's going to be meetings that need to be 2 or 3 or a full day kind of meeting agenda, certainly. But most of the weekly tactical meetings, sometimes quarterly updates, those sort of things, your daily meetings in some instances need to be an hour or less. And always remember, just because you set an hour aside doesn't mean you have to take the whole hour. And from a time management standpoint, building an agenda keeps you on time, keeps you on task, and keeps that meeting on point. So we can't stress to anybody that's learning to run an effective meeting more than having an agenda. Single most important part, and especially when you're doing one remotely. There's so many opportunities for a meeting because we're not in our normal structure. We're not in our normal environment. We're sitting at our dining room table. We're sitting in our bedroom. We're sitting in our home office, not our conference room at work or what have you. We're out of our habits. And part of what you want to be able to do as an individual and as a facilitator in meetings is create some new habits that allow for this virtual aspect of a meeting to take place. Again, agendas help tremendously. A best practice within that best practice is, if you can, circulate that agenda 2 to 3 days ahead of time so that everybody, I talked about preparation earlier, so that everybody that is going to be in attendance to that meeting has an opportunity to form thoughts, opinions, ideas, how they can contribute to this meeting, how they can contribute to the cause, the mission, the tasks that we're discussing during the course of that meeting, how they can contribute. versus surprising topics to people on the spot. You're never going to get the robust conversation, the collaboration that you're looking for if you're springing information or asking people for input or topics at the time of the meeting. So best practice, it's a vital behavior. If you can get it 2 to 3 days, no less than 24 hours ahead of time, if you can get your agenda and say, hey, everybody, this is what we're going to be discussing, please come prepared. And it may mean that they need to print some documents to come in to refer to, some data of some sort. It may mean that they'll need to do some research to be fully prepared ahead of time, versus having to re-meet because everybody wasn't prepared to have that discussion right now. So at least 24 hours in advance. And that also allows the attendees to be able to add some data points or some ideas or some vital information that may have been left off of your agenda. Now, depending on you and your style, if you start with an agenda, you're going to get sick of hearing this word agenda. You may be more detailed than others. I, being not a very detailed person, I force myself when I'm building an agenda to put time slots in there. I'm going to talk about this for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 7 minutes, whatever it is, so that it helps me be a little more detailed and keeps me on task. Some people are much more focused than I am and do not require that you set time limits aside for each topic you're going to be discussing. That's a style issue. It's one that works for you. That's not mandatory. The more detailed and the more succinct you want your meetings to be, that's completely up to your taste, but have that agenda circulated in advance. One of the, so many people get frustrated by meetings because what did we just accomplish? We just sat in here for an hour, 30 minutes, 2 hours. What did we accomplish? It was a really nice conversation, but what were we really here for? And I got to tell you, if you've got plans, if you've got strategies, if you've got projects that you're attempting to accomplish or need to or must accomplish, your meetings need to always revolve around the status of the projects that everybody, who's doing what by when, who's doing what by when. And, strategy is a whole nother workshop, but part of your strategy is putting timelines and mileposts to the building of a project or the achievement of a plan or a goal. And so a very important topic that needs to be covered during the course of most meetings is give me an update. You've got to assign people certain pieces of a goal, certain pieces of a project. You got to give me an update. The single biggest reason a strategy doesn't get accomplished, a task doesn't get accomplished, a goal doesn't get achieved, is there are not a steady stream of updates to keep people prioritized and on top of the status of what we're all as a team looking to achieve. So make sure that an important topic to include when appropriate in your meeting is a status update. Make sure that, and this gets back to that detailed thing again, is if everybody had assignments, list their assignments and their responsibilities next to their name on the agenda so that everybody understands, oh yeah, I've got to talk about this when I come in, or I've got to be prepared to share information about this, or wow, I need to get this done, and thank God they gave me 2 days advance notice, I can get it done before I show up for the meeting. Whatever it might, I hate people have to cram, but hey, you want to keep people on task. And if it shows up that they've got to talk about that task or give an update on their part of a project, well, that's one way to keep them on task is make sure you've listed their name, what they have to update everybody on, and to give them the time to be prepared for it. And also during the course of an agenda, preparing for an agenda, is any new items, any updates. Maybe it's a human resources issue, maybe it's a new account issue, maybe it's something that has gone wrong in the organization. I just recently, I'm on the board of directors of a real estate company up in Canada, and although I'd warned the CEO, the founder of this company, multiple times about his social media posting, he didn't listen to me, didn't listen to some other people, and all of a sudden Monday, he had to step down. So why is that important? Well, all of a sudden that changed Monday afternoon's agenda dramatically. And so, you're going to have to always be flexible to new items that are coming along. We had to put together a quick succession plan, et cetera. So make sure that if there's any new items that are going to show up on this agenda, that you give people notice. And if they have the need or have the ability or the requirement to be able to share on those new items off of a standardized agenda posting, make sure that that's listed on there to give them a reminder that they're going to need prepared to talk about that. So with that, I'm going to pause for a minute and turn it over to my cohort, Tony Penn, to talk about running an effective meeting. Here you go, Tony.
Thanks, Vaughn. Appreciate that. And, Vaughn and I both come from backgrounds where we've run thousands of hours of meetings, and we've been involved in thousands of hours of meetings. And we've been able to through that process, been able to see what works and what doesn't. Most of the information that you see here is that we didn't get it out of a book. We got it from having to figure out how to make these meetings effective. Because meetings are necessary. You don't really have as many times as it's never really gone the way you wanted it to go, or you thought it was a waste of time. It is very necessary to be able to pull people together and to be able to share information and collaborate and try to get ideas kind of generated and have people thinking things differently. Because if you try to figure it out on your own, and you don't have these opportunities to communicate, you're not doing yourselves any favors, and you won't be able to build an effective team that gets the kind of results that you're looking for. So meetings, I want to start off by saying they're essential, but if they're not run effectively, it has the reverse effect, and it is a waste of your freaking time. And we've all been there, and we don't know how long this situation is going to last with this virus, and there's going to be a lot more virtual meetings even as things start to open back up. And to Vaughn's point, some of them may be in an office, but they're still going to end up being virtual. So there are some different techniques and some different things you got to look at when you're running things virtually that you don't have to deal with when someone is face to face. And we'll get into some of those as we kind of move along here. So let's go back to there we go. The first thing on the list that we want to talk about is reviewing what it is you're responsible for. Vaughn already talked about it. The agenda, by the way, is critical. We could spend a whole day talking about how important that agenda is and what should be on that agenda. The only thing I wanted to add is that for me personally, and Vaughn mentioned this, as 1 hour meeting, anytime you can have 1 hour or less, it's going to be a lot more effective. Anything beyond that, unless you have a lot of opportunities for breaks and lunch and whatever it is you got going on, people are going to tune out. They're checking out. And one of the things I do is I put a lot of important information and a lot of the great idea sharing up front in the meeting and on the agenda, because I want everybody's seems to be a little bit more at attention for the first half of the meeting, more times than not. So I want to make sure that we get as many great ideas and some of the more important topics get covered in the first half of that meeting. Whether that works for you or not, I don't know, but it certainly has helped me. So yeah, you have to-do lists, you have responsibilities, you got to go over those, you got to go over last month's minutes, or last meeting's minutes, last meeting's notes, and who's responsible for what. Vaughn, I think, pretty much made this as clear as you need to know. If you know in advance what you're responsible for, you're going to be a lot more prepared, and you're going to have a lot more to offer in the course of these meetings. So make sure you understand what the to-do list is and what your responsibilities are, and be prepared to discuss it. Because accountability, once people know they're accountable, they tend to be more prepared, and they have a lot more to offer. If you're winging it as you go, and people aren't prepared as they come in, then that's when people stop talking, and that's when one person dominates, and it doesn't run as smoothly as if people know, hey, I'm going to have to present, I'm going to do my homework, I'm going to be ready, which is a good segue into, the second one we have on here, which is getting your teammates to share. And to me, this is the most important thing about running an effective meeting, because if it's dominated by one person, unless it's a webinar like we're doing, if it's dominated by one person, then a lot of those ideas are never going to come to the forefront, and that great conversation is not going to come to the forefront. And we've all been in this situation where one person's dominated while another person sits there and doesn't say anything. And the funniest thing happened yesterday. We did a training session on how to get your employees to buy in, and and all that kept coming up was talking about how in meetings, which wasn't even part of the discussion, how in meetings one person dominates and other people don't say anything. And so we talked through that with them as we're doing now, which kind of stresses the importance of making sure that every individual is represented and everybody is prepared to share. And Vaughn and I have thousands of stories that we could tell you about the quietest, the shyest person in the room that's come up with some of the greatest ideas that any of us have ever experienced. And if we didn't allow for that opportunity, then we would have never learned that. And so you're asking yourself, well, what do I do about this? What do I do about the individual that dominates and the individual that doesn't talk? Well, first of all, it should be done off-site or not in the course of the meeting. You should be having specific protocols for your meeting. You should have, these are the rules of the road, the ground rules, whatever you want to call them. This is how we run a meeting. That's why Vaughn, in his infinite wisdom, has those type of agendas that specify exactly what time, how much time each person gets, so you don't get off track. So you want to have these protocols in place so that you have the opportunity to discuss with each individual separately what role they play within that. And if there is an individual that's talking too much, then you're getting with that individual and saying, okay, here's how we're going to do it from now on. Here's your allotted amount of time. Don't be surprised if you go beyond that, if I reel you back in. So you're not calling them out in the middle of a meeting, which has negative effects, because you could turn that person that's offering a lot and bringing a lot to the table, and you could just shut them down entirely, or you can get them pissed off or whatever, I don't know, whatever the case may be. But the motto is talk to them separately, get them to understand how the protocols work, and let them know you're going to reel them in. Conversely, the people, hey, that are a little bit shyer, here's what you need to prepare to talk about. I am going to call on you. I want to know what you have. Your input is extremely important. So provide that feedback and be ready. And most of the time when I've done that, it's worked out pretty well. People, even if they're shy, as opposed to being called on without really knowing what how the response is going to go, it seems to be pretty effective. So keep that in mind. And you got to encourage participation. Everybody's got to participate in order for these meetings to be effective. So let's go back to I'm going to run through all of these. The third one is have some fun. And you're probably sitting there asking yourself, how can you have fun in a meeting? Meetings are boring, and boredom is the one weapon that will kill your meeting. So you gotta spice it up. And even if you're not that type of individual that has that type of personality, you got to come up with activities or an activity or two, if you don't have a lot of time, to be able to create some fun, whether they're awards, games, talking about success stories. That could be one of the things that you give, that you have the shy person shares. Hey, we know you just solved this problem. We know you just accomplished this goal. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it, and let's celebrate it. The other thing that I've always done, which has always worked for me, is doing meetings off-site and having food as part of that process. So it's not something you're able to do every time you have a meeting, but at least once a month, I would take the meeting off-site. I would have it as a lunch or happy hour, whatever the case may be, and we would talk about personal things going on in our lives, and we'd learn about each other, and that helped create somewhat of a bond, which again allowed people to be more participatory within these meetings when they felt a little more comfortable and they trusted a little bit who they were dealing with. So have some fun whenever possible. The next one, technology. Now, technology is taking on a different role here remotely. And so that's something that we have to consider as well. But I will tell you that one of the things, I think it's the last one on here too, is in order for this to work virtually, you have to have everybody's attention. We're doing this webinar style, so it's not that big a deal. But if you're having a meeting with your team, all videos are on, and no distractions whenever possible, unless it's relevant to the content of the meeting. And I know that's difficult because that's the world that we live in, and everybody, struggles with not looking at their phone for 2 minutes. But I can tell you, if you want to get a lot accomplished in a short period of time, you got to stay off the technology. And then when we talk about other distractions related to remotely, we're in a whole different world with that as well. Vaughn mentioned his wife that's in the other room. I've got a daughter that's doing online training in the other room. A lot of people on this call have kids that have been at home doing online training for school. So how do you eliminate all those distractions? And without going into a completely other module we teach, which is time management, I will quickly say that you have to be able to block time. You have to be able to create the time to have these meetings. If you're having them in your home and they are business meetings, you have to eliminate all the other distractions that come with it. And the only way to do that is for the entire world that you live in, understanding what 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. means. You sit down with everybody and have your own family meeting to discuss 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Because 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. is when mom or dad or whoever you are needs that time. And we need to eliminate all distractions. So keep that in mind, because that's a difficult one when you're doing it remotely. And it's easier said than done, by the way. I think my daughter's run by here like twice already, so she's got to get ready for work. But that it can get a lot worse, as a lot of you on this call have probably experienced. Keep discussions on topic. And again, for me, if you're going to get this done in an hour, you better keep it on topic. And I got to a point in my career where, because I sat through so many meetings that went 2 or 3 hours with about 30 minutes worth of relevant information, that I would lost my mind. So when I got to a point where I was leading meetings in life, it was going to go the opposite direction, to where we had a very specific agenda, one that we're kind of going to look at the end here. And we stuck to that agenda. And that agenda had to do with the customer experience, cost control, which included sales, building, and people. And if we were on people and you start talking about something else, you got reeled in pretty quick. And again, you're probably sitting there thinking, well, that may or may not work in my world. The only way it worked in my world was because through repetition and consistency. I did it the same way every week. So now it became a joke, a running joke within the people that work for me, that, oh man, don't start talking about people when we're talking about costs, or somebody's going to, get yelled at or whatever. So consistency and repetition becomes the key to making sure your meetings run effectively. And if you decide that one week you're going to follow an agenda, and the next meeting you're going to wing it, you're going to lose people, and they're going to tune out, unfortunately. Next is keeping the meetings flowing at a brisk pace. I think all of this kind of goes together. It's harder to do remotely, to keep things flowing the way they need to be, because of the unusual nature of it. I think we're at a point now, though, where we're all used to it. We've all been on enough of these Zoom meetings to really understand how to keep things moving and how to stay focused and keep your attention, because believe me, we've all been on Zoom meetings, and I've been on a couple recently where they just got so out of control. I had to bounce out, because we stopped gaining information and they stopped being effective. There was no point in being there. And I think most of us are in a world now where we don't have any time to afford to not be involved in something that's actually getting us the results that we're looking for. So make sure they're flowing, respect everybody's time. Vaughn already talked about it. But you have to facilitate it. It's not going to flow at a brisk pace unless you're the one that makes sure that that happens. So keep that in mind. And sometimes you have to just shut people down, unfortunately. Notes, in Vaughn and in my world, notes are mandatory. Notes are mandatory because we're not smart enough to remember things. Our capacity for retention is not great. Some of you may be really good at retention. Vaughn and I, not so much. So a lot of great information comes from notes, and things that you would never be able to remember. A lot of times in the Zoom world, you have the benefit of recording like we're doing today, and you can go back. But in any meeting that I'm ever facilitating, someone is taking notes. Not only to remember the great ideas and best practices, but they serve as a written record of the discussion, the decisions, and all the next steps that are needed. There's nothing better for accountability, because believe me, if you don't have notes and you forget something, some of your people know it, and they get it. They watch you. They watch how this works. They're very familiar with, because they've all been in that situation before, as have we, where, you know, somebody goes through a 2 or 3 hour meeting, comes up with all these ideas and ideas and decisions, and then doesn't follow through on any of them because they forget half of them. So taking notes is critical to make sure that you document, you know, the information that's been communicated. It's also helpful for those that weren't able to be there. Sometimes somebody misses a meeting and you need to, you know, make sure that they get the information. I just did a meeting the other day and I recorded it, and this guy was very apologetic. He wasn't able to make it to the meeting, but he was adamant that he got that recording. So I just uploaded the recording and sent it out to him, and he was very appreciative of that because there was some great information on there. And again, sometimes you have to get through a whole recording to get, you know, some great information, which again is why you want to make sure if you're doing an hour meeting, it's all relevant as much as possible. Keep all team members in the loop. A lot of times you're going to have meetings and not everybody needs to be on that meeting. I think Vaughn mentioned that already, but they still need to be in the loop with regard to the information that comes out of that meeting. So however whatever works for you. For me, it was email. Again, it can be recording. You could edit. This is another thing that I've done, and I know Vaughn's done it too, is we'll take an hour meeting and we'll edit, you know, about 5 or 10 minutes of it that's relevant maybe to a specific department. And then we'll send that link to that department so that they don't have to sit through the entire meeting, which is another advantage of recording. Editing is a pain in the ass, but recording is a good idea. And then I already mentioned it, turn on your video. And again, it may sound silly, but it happens all the time. We do morning meetings. We did one, Vaughn and I did one a few days ago at 8 o'clock in the morning for about, 15, 20 people. And half of them were on video. And we just said, sorry, you gotta be on video. And they were, oh, I didn't do my hair. And of course you turn it on, they look perfectly fine. It's, being vain isn't gonna really matter when you're on a Zoom meeting. So, and if it is a big deal to you, then make sure you're ready to go, because you want to look somebody in the eye. You don't want to look at a name. You really don't. It takes away from the effectiveness of that meeting, and the seriousness of certain conversations. You need to look at somebody in order to do it. So.
And let me just make one point in addition, or to enhance what you've already said, Tony, is, there's a couple obvious reasons why you want folks on video. Tony mentioned one of them. But secondly, if it's a business meeting and they're not on video, who knows what they're doing? And so, it's kind of a rules of engagement and a respect thing. You want to make sure that, people are engaged in this discussion. But secondly, and again, Tony and I are doing a ton of Zoom meetings. We were on one yesterday afternoon, and you can see somebody kind of raise their hand, or you can watch the group and see if somebody's trying to make a point, like you could in a live meeting. And if somebody has that camera off, you can't pick up on those visual clues that somebody wants to jump in. And going way back to what Tony was talking about earlier, that might have been the game changer of ideas or input that was going to come during the course of that. It could have been the single most important takeaway for that particular meeting, for that particular instance. So that's the other huge advantage to keeping it there. And then the last thing, Tony and I struggle with this because again, we're so ingrained with the in-person meeting. We're learning just like you are at the virtual, but what we've learned, especially when we've got larger groups that we're speaking with, is we have to call on people. And that's not something that many of us are used to doing in conducting a meeting, is remembering that I've got a bunch of people on a screen and I've got to get their engagement. And if I can't, if they may be shy about saying something on the camera, I've got to make sure I'm getting everybody involved by calling on them and getting them involved. So it's an extra mindset that you have to go through, because you're losing one of your key components of an in-person meeting, is that presence. And so you have to take it a step further and be able to call on people. You agree, Tony?
Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult even when you can see their faces, but it's even more so when you're only looking at a name. And we've gotten used to doing it, so it's not like it still doesn't happen. But again, to try to keep the flow going, you want everybody right in front of you, because a lot of times it takes that extra second to turn off, to unmute yourself and get back online. And you want to just keep things moving at a brisk pace like we talked about. So make sure your people on video. It makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And now I'm finally going to get to that screen I was so anxious to get to, Tony. I apologize for that distraction during the course of your presentation, sir.
It's okay. I'm so used to being distracted that it didn't really cause a lot of pain. And really, the funny thing about this particular slide is we've pretty much talked a lot about this already. Meetings are necessary. They must go on. It has to be treated as a priority. And the only way that gets treated as a priority is if you make it a priority, and you make it a priority by creating an agenda, getting it out in advance, and following guidelines to make sure that the meeting runs smoothly. The first sign that you're not committed, people are gone. They're checked out. I mean, they'll be there, obviously, but they'll check out. And then a lot of times they won't be there. And, it depends on how you handle that as well. But you want these meetings to be able to create an environment where people feel comfortable sharing information, because that's how you get results, is you share information. You're not there to present data. You could do that separately or at a different time, or you could do it in advance and, take a look at it. I can't tell you how many meetings I've been on in my career where we were told to bring data and show our P&Ls and show our financial results. And I sit there and I would, okay, so these are my sales and this is my cost. And it didn't benefit anybody, and as opposed to, hey, Tony, you run really good labor. Why don't you show what you run and then be prepared to talk about all the things that you've done, all the best practices that you've done to run labor at that level, just as an example. As opposed to just showing you data. Data doesn't mean anything in and of itself. It's got to have the story behind it. So be prepared to talk about the story in advance and not just show data. I don't know why that made me think of that, but and again, everybody should walk away from a meeting knowing exactly what the purpose of that meeting was, why we had that meeting, and what role do I have within the course of the exchange of information within that meeting. because that's the only way we're going to, again, you're going to hear this from Vaughn and I all the time, because it's in the name of our company. It's the only way to get results. And that's all, everything that we do, every module that we discuss, it's all centered around how do you achieve the desired result? Not all the effort and time and some of the BS that you have to go through to create a process. You start with what is the result first that you're looking for. And then you work yourself backwards and say, all right, anytime I'm thinking about any move I'm making, anything I'm saying, any meeting I'm booking, is it going to achieve the desired result? So anytime I don't get the desired result, I need to go back and look at everything I did and make it not about what somebody else didn't do, but make it about where did I miss the mark? Why didn't we get the results that we were looking for? And I'm telling you, in the course of meetings, when you do it that way, it's going to expose a lot of really relevant information for you, and you'll switch it up, and you'll start running a little bit more effective meetings. And I'm telling you this because that's exactly what happened to me. It's like
and he does walk the talk on this. I promise you,
big time. And of course, meetings should always start and end on time. And again, the only reason you put that 3 different times in this presentation is that that's how you gain credibility with the process of meetings, is by being able to start and end and respect people's time. So that's all I got there. So there's a couple ways we could do this. If you want to, because if you want to be able to type in what your greatest takeaway is, or you can certainly speak up. There's only 14 of us on here, so if we'd like to be able to ask a couple of you, what was the greatest takeaway you had from this? You got to unmute though, just so you know.
well, we do have a chat that showed up, and it's from our great friend Jordan. He wanted to share his podcast with everybody. Jordan's a fascinating guy. This will be included with the notes that we send out after this. So just wanted to let everybody know before he had to bail out on us.
Paul, were you going to share something with us?
Yeah, just the creating an agenda, a simple one, and putting that up so everyone in the meeting knows what to expect, along with then follow-up, taking notes. These are items that they're common sense, but you have to go to the effort of making it happen ahead of time. And I know I'm guilty of not making that effort because we all get busy but anyway, just wanted to share. That's my big takeaway, an agenda.
Yeah, well, and I will say this, that we've done this presentation numerous times, and that one comes up just about every time, only because we don't always make it a priority, and we are all busy. It's not like we don't want to create an agenda, but a lot of times we have other things that we're doing, and all of a sudden it's like, oh crap, it's meeting day. Let me whip something together real quick. And the only way around that is it becomes a priority, it becomes one of your platinum activities in the course of your day, to be able to create this and get it out. So, because it ultimately makes it more effective.
I'm gonna go down. Hey, Stephanie and Brian. Hey guys, long time no talk to. I'm going to call on you, Stephanie, if I may. What's something you took away from this conversation this morning?
Definitely just sorry, you just have me, no Brian.
Oh, well, you know what? You're plenty more than I needed.
I would have to say the takeaway for me, definitely the agenda. So I'm going to agree with Paul. The agenda for me is key. Also just setting up the meeting, making sure it's clear, reminding people, following through with the reminders, starting, ending on time. I think that would be I'm so new at this, so just all the basics that you're discussing is really really, it's very basic and clear. So I like that.
Well, yeah, we could do things simple, Tony and I, because, well, I'm a product of the North Carolina public school system, so I have to keep things simple. So, but thanks.
I think the challenge for me would be getting the engagement. My hat's off to both of you for doing this. It's not easy to talk on video and not really get responses from people. Most of us are. I quickly went and put my face on a little bit because I just worked out my hair was on top of my head like a pineapple. So, but just getting people to be engaged and getting their face. I thrive off reactions from people and body language, and being able to stay focused on what your message is without needing all that. So.
Yeah, and it comes with practice, Stephanie. This is easily Tony and I's 150th Zoom meeting in the past couple of months.
Well, you guys are seasoned pros.
I don't know that we're pros, but we certainly have become accustomed to changing things.
Yeah, we are not pros, let me tell you, but we're better than we were. That's all I can tell you.
Practice makes perfection.
One day.
And I like what Tony said about kids running behind you, and there's been some funny things with that one. So
yes, very yes. Thank you, Instagram. And so, anybody else have any contributions? Jordan, you're always a big contributor to these meetings when you attend. What's a takeaway for you, my friend?
Well, yeah, this has all been extremely helpful. So, I mean, I'm glad I joined. Like I was saying in the comments. So yeah, I will. I've been having a lot of meetings. Surrounding my brand and my podcast and stuff, trying to grow that. And so that's kind of the reason I wanted to, check this out. And so I actually have a meeting with one of my guys in like an hour. I'm like, oh, maybe I should have an agenda. So
rock on. All right.
Right. And so I'm going to start it maybe next week, start doing things a little bit differently than I am.
Every journey begins with the first step, my friend.
Right. And so but there's a lot of, but making sure that, everybody has a contribution, that, that there's, I really like the idea of, cutting up the meeting into, bite-sized pieces, because you can kind of rant and stuff like that to try to avoid that. Trying to make things fun, keep things, kind of, charged forward. I can definitely relate to the, that kind of, one person talking the one person talking kind of environment, because of the military, where it's just, they call it those kind of briefing environments. And so, and I remember in those, it was like an unwritten rule to never ask any questions at the end of those.
Thank you, First Lieutenant. Yes. Okay.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's and so kind of doing the stink eye, at people that actually did ask questions. So,
yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so I really appreciate this. There's a lot of, I think it was all good and all stuff that I hope to, implement really soon.
Okay, cool. We hope you do. So Tony, why don't we move over here to the exercises, what we call exercises. This isn't a true exercise, but why don't you go through, we sent you the agendas, and Tony, why don't you go through the two different agendas that we've sent out to everybody?
Yeah, well, the first one, without looking at it, because I have it in my head, is kind of more of a time slot for like Vaughn was describing, where you have specific topics related to a specific time slot. Did everybody get that? If you didn't get it, then we'll send it out to you after this. Just so
I sent out a link for everybody to download it if they chose to. So.
Yeah, so not everybody.
Now I know after this, everybody's going to be downloading that. May break the internet.
Right. So without the benefit of being able to look at it, take a look at both of these. There's two different ways to do it. There's one where we'll call it the Vaughn way of breaking it down by time and content. And so that really helps you with regard to being able to ensure that the meeting flows at a brisk pace, and being able to ensure that all the content does get covered. And then the second agenda was something a little bit more along the lines that I was talking about, with regard to bringing it down into specific categories of topics that are relevant to the business. In the restaurant world, it was the customer experience and everything associated with that, food, anything related to the guest experience coming in to the restaurant. The next was cost control, which is about sales, anything about sales building, food costs, liquor, labor, all of that other stuff. And then within each one of those, there would be somebody presenting. If it wasn't me, I would have the chef do the food cost, another manager talk about labor, another manager talk about liquor. And that's how we kind of gained participation, was by assigning specific tasks as we discussed ahead of time. So the chef was prepared to talk about, here's what it is. Now here's what it is a real quick conversation. Here's what we're doing about if we're having an issue. And here's what everybody's role is that's sitting around this meeting in that issue, in solving that issue. And here's what you need to communicate out to the rest of the team to solve that issue. So that's kind of how it's set up that way. And then it goes into people, and the people part of it was, who are we struggling with and what are we doing about it? Are we going to do reviews? Let's talk about reviews. Okay, because one of the things for me is, if I'm going to review an individual, I want everybody's feedback. I don't just want my opinion. So if I'm going to review Sally, then I want to make sure everybody gives me input on their experience, because it may be different than mine. So this is just an opportunity to lay it all out there for you, and make sure that everybody has it in advance so that they can be prepared. I don't know if Vaughn, you wanted to add to that at all, but.
Well, I think there's so many different forms of meetings, and
Yes,
those forms of meetings have to take on a different form of some planning. And of course, this last time I'm going to say it today probably is agenda. And thank God it's the last time I'm going to say it today. In fact, I'm going to just pop a rubber band the next time I say it. But it's I'm sure everybody's sick of it. But I can't stress the variety of things you can do. Just in the end, it just keeps you organized. Like Stephanie's starting a new business up in Santa Monica, the Alternative Board, and she's going to be running meetings all the time. And it's something that is, although she's going to have protocols, she's got to find her style to those meetings, and she's got to find what works, especially now with the virtual world facing us. So it's finding your pace. It's finding your style, and then, but the structure, you just got to have structure to it.
It's got to have structure, and you got to be consistent.
Yeah.
With it. Did anybody have any questions or anything that they want to cover, or anything that you're dealing with personally that we might be of any assistance? Don't be shy now. Come on. That's one.
All right. Well, let's do this, Tony. Let's bid everybody adieu. Thank you all very, very much. Hold on. We got a couple chats here. Taffy Stockton, thanks for this. I really appreciated the focus on thoughtful planning agendas for the meeting. Said it again. Also like the conversation about how to include those who are not speaking in the meeting, and how to handle people who are taking more airtime than needed. So thank you for that, Taffy. Appreciate that. And or from Art, any tools or tech that help? So tools, Art, if you want to unmute yourself and talk about what you might have in mind in a more specific manner. Jordan just raised his finger, but Art, if you are you interested in speaking, or do you have the ability to speak? And
he's on mute,
please.
Hi. Sometimes there are like meeting apps to help you organize agendas or help you take notes on things. I mean, anything that you've seen in terms of when people have been remotely working that they use, so that you can share your screen on Zoom, of course, but then you can go and use a tool to help you organize your meetings.
Tony,
I was going to say there are, and I've talked to people that have used them, and I don't personally use any apps, but I do know a lot of people that do, and that would, because I don't use them, I don't know any names specifically, but I'm sure Google could could find you a couple to look at. But to your point, I've seen a couple of those apps around.
And so what are you trying to help with the organization of it? Because there's a couple I'm aware of that I can send you. I've got your email through Eventbrite. I can send you a couple links to a couple tools I'm aware of that I know other people that I work with utilize. And if you want me to do that, I'd be more than happy to do that offline.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
Okay, sure. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that you know, as far as like video chat, I've been using Google Meet.
Yeah.
Have you guys been using that at all? So yeah, I think that's kind of really fun that you can not only see the captions with it, but but also that you can there's an extension where you can, you know, save those conversations too, and, you know, use them for transcriptions or for whatever you need for later. So
Yeah, Google Meet is great, and believe me, if Zoom didn't make it so easy, more people would be on Google Meet. And obviously, once you get on Google Meet, it's not that hard, but
right.
Zoom just made it too easy for everybody, I think, and
Yeah.
they just got the lion's share. So
Mm-hmm.
I hear a lot of good things.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, they can't all have those fancy virtual backgrounds, right? So.
Exactly.
Yeah. The downside.
Right.
Linda has something that she wanted to share with us, which is her greatest takeaway with the thoughts and ideas about virtual meetings. The video participation, I agree with. That part of seeing the person, their reactions, etc., is key to communications. I have to leave at this moment. Sorry to see you leave. I enjoyed it too, Linda. Thank you very, very much. Thanks for being here. So with that, we're gonna close this meeting and workshop. And thank you all very, very much. If you would like to discuss other modules that Tony and I deliver in the way of management training and leadership development, please reach out to us at rdltraining.com. And so thank you all very, very much for joining us today. We truly appreciate the loyalty, and we look forward to seeing you at next month's workshops very soon. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.